Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Johansson show. Today, very special guest, Liam Slater. Liam, thank you for coming on.
No worries, Kurt. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Always somebody I've wanted to speak to. And then when I reached out and you're like, yeah, let's do it. Happy days. Like, I think your body of work, especially like still at a young age, and you've taken a hiatus and come back. But I think your body of work, especially in this northeast area of England, is fantastic, like fans' favourite, some great storytelling which we'll get into. So it's good to see you back on the wrestling scene.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, like the North holds a special place in my heart, and yeah, it's somewhere that I've grown to love and been around a lot. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just shit timing. You come back and then the pandemic.
Well, honestly, I couldn't have written it any better. Where I was like, okay, like 2020, like I've got some stuff lined up, I've got bits ready to go, and then literally it was a case of, and the world closes. But it's there's been elements of it where it's been a blessing as well. So I can't complain too much that we had the close down, because I mean, really, I never got restarted. So when we do restart, it's just, oh, this is when I was meant to restart.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it restarts, the whole British scene's doing a restart with
absolutely
all of the speaking out movement that happened. And I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, that movement may never have happened.
No.
So I think although it's been taxing on people's mental health from the pandemic side, but also the speaking out movement, hopefully it just means it's going to be a lot better. I know,
yeah,
like, Twitter's a cesspool at the moment anyways, but and things aren't always going to be perfect, but it seems like we're going in the right direction, and hopefully that'll help you stick around and keep your love for wrestling in check.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think that this was massively needed from all sorts of sides out of it, and this time away is going to allow British wrestling to regrow again. And people talk about like, oh, British wrestling's dead and this and that, but I've seen it go through ups and downs already, and we just had a massive up. And unfortunately, that up was filled with a lot of people that abused the power and took far too much from it without giving enough back. And I think actually this is a great chance for it to restart. I think there was a lot of things, and this is conversations that I've had with people, where it had fallen into a rut of being almost a parody of itself.
Yeah.
And this time away, with things like the change in how we operate, which was really needed, I don't think shows will come back the same, just because I don't think there's going to be promotions out there that are doing that. And also I think the ways that we're looking to make sure that everybody's safe and looked after means that the way it used to operate won't work anymore. And I think that's a blessing. I really do, because it got to a point where it was like, it's the same card everywhere. Yeah. And now I think there's a really good chance for everywhere to be individual and do something different.
Definitely. And like the first time NXT UK came about and everybody was getting signed, and it was the first time of, oh, Brit is dead. It proved it wasn't, because then you get the next crop coming through, and yes, most of those are now being signed, whether it's AEW or WWE. But the thing is, like, some companies did struggle, but that is because it's literally somebody will do a group of guys will do a show on Saturday, and then those 10 will drive to the next town and do it for a different company. And when you're using a lot of these same stars and not really utilizing academies and stuff, and I don't know if you agree, but with NGW, I don't think was affected at all, because they always worked on different people, whether it was like yourself, you've got Cruz and Myers, and then everybody that they've been bringing through their academy. If you invest in the youth, then it helps those building blocks to. I always tell this example with Ospreay being in Hull City Hall against Robbie X, and nobody. Well, I won't say nobody could care less because he still does what he does in the ring, and people was like, "Whoa!" But everybody wanted Robbie X,
Yeah,
and if you build your stars locally, you don't have to be paying thousands of pounds for these imports or thousands of pounds for these indie popular wrestlers because your homegrown audience has grown to love these other individuals.
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think NGW always did a really good job in terms of building their own stars, and I think you just had to look at Hull City Hall with the crowds that we were pulling in and the storylines that we were doing, the and the fact that we weren't relying on these like big indie matches.
Yeah.
And yes, it was. NGW was never like a popular like Twitter company, which is fine. It didn't need to be. It was like we were selling out Hull City Hall. So what does it matter if it's not super over on Twitter? I think North did a really good job of sort of sitting on the borderline where yes, it was indie, but the Riverside crowd were the Riverside crowd. You
Yeah.
know, and they came to North and they enjoyed North and they enjoyed the atmosphere. And again, Bowers always did a really good job of building up talent, and like
Yeah.
people like the landed gentry were super over. And again, they're not like indie guys. Main Event Wrestling, who's also up in Newcastle,
Yeah.
run the Innisfree Club, or we're running the Innisfree Club, selling it out every single time. And I can guarantee that really nobody was looking at that on like an internet basis.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like those shows were some of the best shows I ever did because they were just fun and it was people going because they loved wrestling. So yeah, I think being able to build those homegrown talents is crucial and vital. I think something that a lot of promotions sometimes miss out on to get that like internet buzz.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know the ins and outs of where the finances come in and like the video on demand subscriptions and stuff like that, but it's one of those you can only subscribe to so much. And if you're already subscribed to one channel, and then there's another company that are putting all these matches together, but it's kind of the same roster, you kind of wait for it to happen in the one that you're already subscribed to. Whereas, like you said, with the storytelling, I've got an interview with Dara. I've not released it yet, and by the time this is out, it had been released. And I was saying to him, like, his whole heel turn, and we won't mention the person who it was against, but his whole heel turn was fantastic. And I think because the way NGW ran, I think you'll agree, like, you've had people grow up in front of you because it's not that
Yeah,
quick, and you're telling a story over 1, 2, 3, 4 years. You've had kids in the crowd where they've become teenagers, or you've had adults where they've taken the kids across, and it's like, oh well, what? I'm like, oh, this isn't too bad, and then oh, that's actually cool. That's something new
yeah,
for him, and then you've got the internet crowd where they can appreciate all the good storytelling, and for example, the change in Dara, and more specifically to yourself, your stuff with Screwface and Connors was some of the best stuff on British wrestling wherever. Like if you put that on TV, which it was with all the Estuary TV and stuff like that. If you put that on TV, people are going to pay attention because it was all the storytelling, and it was just all the little bits as well. From there could be like a show you was on where you're like, oh, maybe not much happened with Connors and yourself, but if you look back and watch it, and not from the live attendance, it could be the camera panning into your facials and your different mannerisms, which then all built and built and built to you and Connors.
yeah, definitely. I think again, one of the really good things that NGW did was that it was long term. And like for me, for example, going through like the academy to doing like the battle royal, the bonus arena,
The Destiny
and
Rumble.
then yeah, like but even before that, where we had like the proving ground battle
Oh,
royal that got us into that. Um, and then doing the local shows and doing the proving ground stuff, and really those dedicated fans were rewarded with seeing those people grow up in front of them. And again, I think that's something more that you can do when you're investing in people in a company that then you go, right, this is the brand that we're
yeah.
bringing forward, rather than it being like, oh, well, this is going to pop in a short amount of time. I say it quite frequently. when it comes to like fireworks, like there's only so many times you can watch a firework before it loses its spark. But then,
So you turn and then go back inside because it's just like the last firework.
yeah, and it does get to that point where it's like, okay, I've seen this. Whereas you could watch a movie that tells a really good story, and you could watch that time and time again. And there's movies that tell the same story in essence, but different facets of it. And then you would always go and watch that. And I think that's really the way that wrestling should operate. But I can see why also fireworks are cool, because fireworks are cool, and you get the reaction, you get the internal like, oh wow. So I can completely see why fireworks shows exist.
Yeah, definitely. But I think like your story with NGW, like you mentioned, were in the academy, you came through doing the little rumbles, and then would you agree like one of your big first stories would have been with the Control, where you'd been helping Myers, Cruz, and Colossus, and then after that you've got the whole Connors and Screwface, and I think before your departure, to me, the only place was to be going for the title. And it's a shame that never came to fruition, because you was doing that in Tidal, and you was doing great stuff in Tidal with that title reign. Why Venga Boys?
All right, so where that came from is when I first started wrestling. So I started at UKW, which is based in Wakefield, and I was doing bits and pieces in and around the Leeds area as well, on like smaller shows, which these like smaller working men's club shows I'd like to touch on in regards to how wrestling is going to look in the future. So we'll keep that in mind. But when I was appearing on these shows, everybody was using like rock songs, and I'd gone through a bit of a phase of using rock songs, and I was like, everybody's doing this, and what can I do to sort of make myself that little bit different? So I was sat on the bus going to would I have been going to uni? Yeah, going to uni, and I had like a 90s dance album on there, and like the last song was "We Like to Party" by the Venga Boys, and I sat there and I listened to it, and I'm like, yeah, this has a good drop-in point. Like I can see how this comes out into it, and this is fun, it's different, and it's not rock music. Because I was listening to it because I was like, right, okay, I want something that's not like guitar riff, and something that just sort of pops a little bit differently. So I'd used it on a GBW show, which was a working men's club, and it really worked. And I was like, okay, this sits really nicely. So then the first big show that I'd used it on was one of the over 18 shows at the Welly nightclub that NGW did. I wasn't supposed to be wrestling on that show. I was just there just to help out, and Dean Allmark couldn't make it, so I ended up wrestling Zach Gibson. I said to, do you remember Geach at all? Yeah. So like Geach was like pretty much like running around doing everything. I said to Geach, like, I want to use "We Like to Party" by the Venga Boys, and he's like, it's not going to work. That's dumb. That's a silly idea. That's not going to work. I'm like, just if it don't work, it's fine. Like I'm a jobber anyway. But
for context for people as well, sorry to cut you off. Welly is where when that's normally open and wrestling's not on, there's mosh pits.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you still may get people trailing because, Welly's open, let's go in. And even if it's the wrestling, they'll go in to get pissed as well. So to play Venga Boys is a bold move for the debut at Welly, but go on.
And again, I think because there were so many people that were using like rock songs, and by that point in the night, like we were sort of like mid-cardish towards the back end of the show, people had enough drink in them, and like pretty much that time period, they'd been like, oh, Venga Boys, I remember Venga Boys. And that's pretty much where the dance started out of it. So really, the Venga Boys was through no... I mean, I like 90s dance music, but it's through no like, oh God, like this is my song. And like anybody that knows me knows that I'm not like a dancer or anything like that. I'm not a party person. I don't drink and I don't do anything like that. So like, it's not really me, but it was something that set me apart, and it then became part of the character of like, how do we incorporate this? And then through training, okay, how do we take it from being an entrance to then using it in ring? And then what does that character do that then fits in with that? And then how can I twist it so it's different and it progresses onwards?
Brilliant. What was the difference between Lazarus and Slater?
I mean, really, the bare bones of it is that Rich Dunn didn't particularly like Lazarus, if I'm being completely honest with it. Again, like there's no real big story behind Lazarus. It was just a case I was looking for like a name, and I was trying to think of something, and I was reading a Batman comic, and Lazarus Pit, the Ra's al Ghul thing, was in there. I was like, this is alliteration, and it's got a Z in it, and Z's are cool. So I'll stick this in, and it sort of stuck, and it worked. I do think Rich was right in that it was a little bit gimmicky and probably not what I was. So actually being able to, and one of the reasons why I stopped doing it was because I was finding it hard to put myself over, to put myself out there when I had two names, and when really my biggest stuff that I was doing was NGW, where I was using Slater, but then everywhere else I was using Lazarus. And it was just a gradual transition out of that. But then I also think that added into me changing as a performer as well, to go, right, okay, I'm this. I don't think I ever really finished that character, if that makes sense.
Who was it that you was training with at NGW? Was it like Cruz?
Yeah, so a bit with Cruz. We came with a Leeds car, so there was a time period where we were training with someone that we won't mention. So yeah, it was pretty much that. We did some training with Myers as well, but very much I was in with the NGW trainers from, what time period would that have been? 2013 to, what would it have been, 2016, in that sort of period.
What prompted you to go to NGW?
I needed more from what I was getting out of training. UKW, at one point in UKW, we had Valcavius. So I managed to angle it because I was doing the shows that I was doing. I was like, can I just not pay for training? And we sort that out. And they were like, yeah, sure, that's no worries. So I was just going to whatever I could. At one point in time, we had Valcavius on a Monday, Chris Travis on a Tuesday. I don't think there was anything on the Wednesday because it was a beginner's night. Thursday, we had Rampage Brown and Prince Amin, and then we had Danny Steele on a Saturday as well. And I was just like, this is fucking class. Like, look at all these different people that I'm learning from. And it was like just taking bits from everybody. And like at that point in time where I was just about show ready, like I needed that. But Rampage Brown had come back from WWE. It was the first thing that he was doing once he'd come back. And these classes maybe had like 4 or 5 people in them. And like myself, I was there, Jack Turner was there, and Serico was there. And it's like, I look back on it and I go, imagine being in the West Yorkshire area and not jumping on that chance.
Even in the UK, it baffles me to anybody in the North where if there's like a seminar or whatever, like even the whole lads, like just try and travel up to the North. There's enough drivers and stuff like that because it's fucking Rampage. Like, to me, he's the best wrestler in Europe.
Absolutely, and I think you only have to look at the people that he's putting out in his school where you go, actually, there's a really good, better people in here that just need some extra eyes on them to really elevate them up. But it will get there. So anyway, to go back to the original question, for different circumstances, those people had ended up leaving, and the quality of training had sort of dropped. And I was looking around and I was going, I'm not really getting any better, and I need to get better. So really, the logical thing to do was go to Hull because UKW were bringing in Hull lads. Like, I remember, do you know the spinning back kick? The Sabat kick, I think it is, the midsection kick. I knew that as like the NGW kick because anybody that came from NGW, like Myers, Robbie Hex, would do this like spinning back kick. And I was like, oh, it's like the NGW indie kick. But they were bringing in NGW guys. And I was like, why are they being brought in? Like, what is it? Guys. Yeah. So I went, I need to go and I need to travel, really. And I was fortunate enough at the time. There was myself, there was Dan James, and there was Sean Only, where we were like, and Jack Turner, unfortunately, he was just slightly out of the way for Jack. And Jack had a sabbatical as well that just came around that point. But there were us three that travelled across religiously, and we were the Leeds car that travelled across. And I was just really fortunate in that I was able to do it, and I had the means to travel across the whole, really.
Oh, brilliant. And I think like what NGW have achieved, again, not being that internet company, they help with World of Sport. They've done, they helped with WCPW especially when that turned into Defiant, and it was good to see, like, again, your growth within that. And again, running parallel was your stuff with Tidal. Like, I want to touch upon that because he was having some fantastic matches with the who's who of British wrestling, whether it's Martin Kirby, Morgan Webster, your couple of matches with Rampage. And didn't you get a concussion early?
I did. Yeah, I got knocked out in the first match. One. Yeah. To be honest, that actually it made the title run better, because really, like, I'd won the title, and we didn't really have a story going forward with it. We didn't really have like something to go in with. So the fact that like I got knocked out, I won the belt. The story was a redemption of like, can I prove that I am worthy of having the championship, which then built to the second Rampage match, which was the last man standing match. So for me, being knocked out, while at the time it was horrendous. I remember being the only bit that I remember from the end of the match is me being stood in the ring. I had Dan Eagles with me, who was a referee, and I was just like, I don't know where I am. I don't, like, where am I? And then after that point is being backstage, and people won't know that the stylist leads uni backstage, but basically you go off the stage, and it was such a long walk to get to like where we were getting changed. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember walking past anybody. I don't remember going up the stairs. The first bit I remember is Kaz passing me a water bottle. But being in ring, I was like, I don't know where I am. Like, what's happening? So scary at the time, but then it led to the story that came out of it, which I think it needed at that point in time.
How did you feel getting back in the ring for the first time after knocking yourself out? Did you have any hesitations or?
No, I don't think I did. I just went, right, I'm just going to have to get back in and get back to training. I'm trying to think if like I got someone to give me a power bomb like when I was back in, just to get over that. But also, like, I knew what had happened. Like, it was a case. I think I've touched on this on something else, but basically, over that weekend, I had a Saturday show and a Sunday show. On the Saturday, we were at Eastmount, and it was like the summer Smash Brawl shows that they did. And I was in a match with Sam Wilder, and there was a bit of a miscommunication as to when he was going to hit me with a forearm. So we'd done this pin, kicked out, I'd hit the ropes, and I was expecting to come back into the middle, and he hit me with a forearm. He'd called it where he was going to catch me on the ropes with a forearm. So he called me on the ropes at the forearm, and I just wasn't expecting it. And I got like a white flash. And when you have a white flash, and I think this is something that wrestlers need to know more about, but when you have like a white flash, it's a mini concussion, because your brain's rattled around in your head. Yeah. And I vividly remember having a flashback to the show that we did previously, the Christmas show at Eastmount, in that moment, and I snapped back out of it. And like for a second, I was in a completely different place, and then came back, and I was like, well, that was weird. So I'd had that mini concussion. Then on the Sunday, wrestling Rampage, the first shot that Rampage gave me, white flash again, and I was like, this isn't good. Yeah. And then we come to the end of this match. We come to the end point of the match. He gives me a power bomb. Gives me a second power bomb. On the first one, he goes, hold on. I'm like, yep, I'm there for it. I start coming up, but I don't bring myself up high enough, so I'm almost at an angle. Yeah. So as I'm coming back down again, I stay at that angle, and I just hit the back of my head and spin out, and I'm out. No fault of Rampage. I didn't get up high enough, and I'd had 2 previous mini concussions within that short space of time that I think just all accounted into it. So I wasn't scared because I knew why it had happened. So I was just like, I've just got to get back in and just go again.
Ah, brilliant. But yeah, like for that run then, what's it like being in the ring with Rampage then?
In fact, easily one of the best people that I've ever wrestled. I wouldn't even say that. He probably is the best person that I've ever wrestled. Just a pro, and you only have to look at him and just go, he's just a wrestler, isn't he? Like, he just gets it and moves well and has such a presence around him. And I wanted to bring that to him, and I always felt like my best matches were against Rampage because it brought me up. He did a really good job of bringing me up to close to his standard, rather than me pulling him down to my standard. So the physicality I always felt was there, and I felt like I brought it better when I was against Rampage than anybody else. He just is a wrestler, and it doesn't. If he's on like the more well-known shows in terms of an internet presence, still shows there. If he's on the Butlins run, where it's in front of people that don't really get wrestling, he's still the man there. Like, he's just a professional through and through. I'm super, super happy that he's in with the NXT UK stuff, because I'm hoping this is his final showing of going, I'm the man and you messed up when I left. Because he left as well. He was like, I'm not happy doing this. And he went. And it's just, I would happily spend all day bigging up Rampage because he's the best.
He was the first ever live show I went to was NGW 5th anniversary, I believe it was. And it was the show that Rampage, I think it was Rampage's first show back.
Yeah.
That's NGW, where he came in and just destroyed Myers and Cruz. And at that time I was like, am I going to like wrestling live? I've only seen it on TV. Am I going to like British wrestling? And out comes Rampage. I'm like, he's a fucking beast.
Yeah. Like, he looks like a wrestler. Like, you just look at him and you're like, what a presence that he carries. Like, and again, like, he's got an athletic background. He played football. He could have had a football career and didn't because he chose wrestling. Just, he's a presence. He's an athlete. Very much in the same way that Ridge Holland is an athlete, is a presence, and carries himself fantastically well.
Yeah, definitely. I always remember seeing Rampage. I think it was, it had been PCW, and he was against the Dudleys, and Bubba had given him a massive chop. So Rampage was like, you're not going to stiff me. Turns it around, slaps him back. And then Bully was like, don't like that. So he did it again. And Rampage was just, I'll give you as hard as you give me every single time. And I remember seeing him the night after in Northallerton. I was like, how was your chest? He was like, just look at that. He was like, I was just going to give him as much as he tried giving me. And it's good to see him in NXT UK. Like, surely he's going to be the person to dethrone.
Has to be. Yeah. It would make sense. So,
what else stands out from your title run? Because I know you had matches with like Gargano as well.
Yeah, that's coming up from now. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. I found the DVD at my mum's when I went round to. I've been really bored at home, so I went round to my mum's and picked up my PS2 to relive my glory days of playing PES 5. But yeah, it was there. So the match with Johnny Gargano was in Darlington, basically in front of nobody. But that was a fun experience. I had a nosebleed right before. Well, at the beginning of the show, I had a nosebleed and he just turned up. So I'm there in the toilet paper up my nose. I'm like, oh, hi, mate. Like, we're wrestling tonight. Don't worry. This happens all the time. And honestly, there couldn't have been a worse introduction to meeting him than like me like pissing blood out my nose. But yeah, that was really cool. I think just at that time, it was a chance for me to do more of the indie stuff and do more of like a main event style match. And it was just a really cool opportunity to actually get that time to wrestle people. I think looking back on it, I could have probably pushed more and done more with it and been more out there and taken some more risks with stuff. But at the time, I don't think I was capable of doing that and executing it correctly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember seeing your stuff with WCPW / Defiant, and I think that's the first time the North has had an internet company.
Yeah.
And like obviously we get Progress and Rev Pro and ICW touring around the area, but it's the first time there's a company predominantly based there, and that gave you a lot of opportunities. And finally got I'd say the world, like everybody buzzing about yourself as well, because they'd seen you in matches where you and Gabe Kidd or Tyler Bate or Zack Sabre Jr. who was doing fantastic stuff, and you had opportunities against like Cody and teaming with Johnny Moss. What was that whole experience like with WCPW and the like the atmosphere. What was the atmosphere like there? So it was bringing in a lot of names.
I always enjoyed WCPW. I mean, I've sort of talked about it previously. I did a lot of production stuff with NGW and doing that sort of stuff. If you saw the lighting rig that NGW had, I would have been at the show, probably wrestling on the show, but then also putting the lighting rig up.
He's always there setting it up. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was very much a big part of that production setup. So for me, it was a weird mix of, yeah, I was interacting with people and the imports, but I was never really like one of the boys in that sense, because we'd get there at like 6 a.m. to start setting up, and then we'd be finished at midnight, 1 o'clock after we've taken everything down. So I saw like two different sides to it. I saw the wrestlers and I got to interact with them backstage. And then I also saw all the people doing the production work and interacting with the WCPW guys that were coming in. I always enjoy my time. My fondest memory from WCPW was I think the second show that we did at the O2 Academy. And at the O2 Academy in Newcastle, there's a balcony that looks over the stage that you can't see from like crowd side. And we'd finished setting up, and I was just walking backstage, and I went through the curtain, and there was Gabe Kidd, Alex Grayson, I think Lucas Archer was stood up on the balcony as well. And they were just stood in there, they were laughing, they were chatting, and I waved to them, and they waved back down again. And for me, that was WCPW. Was, yes, there was the imports, and yes, there was those big matches, but there was this undercard that just loved wrestling and was so happy to have that opportunity to finally be able to showcase something more, or to showcase themselves in front of more people. So I always loved the atmosphere. I can't really recall any like bad imports as such. Like everybody that came in was really friendly, and everybody that I wrestled was really friendly.
Yeah.
Even when it got to like stages where there was a mad amount of people on the show, and like say for example, like Kurt Angle was really friendly. I did an in-ring segment with Bret Hart, and that was fun, you know. Although in saying that, as soon as the segment finished, boom, he was out. Like it was the quickest I'd seen him move all day. Like it's incredible. So yeah, for me, it was just an overall positive experience, but a lot of work, especially when we were doing days where it was like, what was that run? There was a run where we must have done like Newcastle to Leicester to Manchester. I wish I knew like the exact one out of it. And it was just like, this is insane, and we're dying. And credit to HT Drake as well, who did the ring job stuff, and he was driving around, and he was probably putting in more hours than I was, and I was putting in a hell of a lot of hours.
Yeah. Now, I always remember, like, even from the Brit Rest Fest that NGW did in the Olympia in Liverpool.
The coldest building in the world.
Yeah. And, like, the days are long, and I don't think people do understand that. And, like, hopefully when things go back to normal, because I've seen it before where people are like, oh, well, he was quite ignorant because they see him in a rush. And it's like, that might be the first 5 minutes he's had spare on the show, because if you are there setting up, it can be very busy. And what was it like getting told you're going to be in a segment with Bret Hart then?
To be honest, there's a lot of these things. So it's like, that was on the pay-per-view, like the first pay-per-view. And we were like the first segment out, and it was setting up like a title thing. It was very much a case. I think I was almost late to the segment because we were still rushing around setting stuff up. It's like now, and I was like, oh, okay, shit. Like, I don't think my boot's done up on it. There are so many moments from WCPW that I look back on and I go, you know what, that was really cool. But at the time, I was just like, it's just another thing. Like, I've got to do this show because then we've got to take down the set afterwards. So like winning the tag belts with Johnny Moss in Nottingham was cool, but then I had to get changed, get covered up, because the cage match was at the main event.
Yeah.
So, and I was the guy that was making sure that cage went up. So the day was spent constructing this cage and test running that we could get it up in time. Then I had to plan this match. We did the match, we won the belts, and it was like, right, cool, get this cage up and set and ready. I think we did it in like 11 minutes or something like that, which was like a quick time. And I was more pleased about that than I was about the tag belts, because I was like, cool, like we've not saved the show, but we've kept the show moving. Like, again, it was a pay-per-view.
I've been at a show where I think it took about 40 minutes for them to set the cage up.
Yeah. Like, that was a prime thing, that they were like, we need this to go up fast because we're on pay-per-view. And I was like, don't worry, like, we will do it. And we did it. Same thing with the Cody match as well. Like, looking back on that, I wish I'd have taken some more time and sat more with Cody and done that sort of stuff. But really, I was just like, this is just a match. Like, it's just another match that I was going through. And that very much felt like my career at WCPW from my end, was that I wasn't taking enough time to enjoy it, because I was like, this is just a match. And that leads into the hiatus stuff as well.
Yeah. So whilst you mentioned the hiatus, then without going into too much of your personal details, like, what prompted you to leave wrestling? Because you'd just done the World of Sport stuff, which we'll touch upon after the hiatus, but what prompted it?
So, funnily enough, the World of Sport stuff actually came after the decision to step away from it. So there was a lot of like personal stuff that went into it and sparked it. Yeah. But I don't think that I'd taken the decision if I wasn't as burnt out on wrestling as I was. And looking back on it, it was definitely the right choice for me, because I had a lot of stuff that was going on personally that I wasn't looking at, I wasn't recognizing, because I was too engulfed in this thing. And looking back on it, again, I was burnt out with wrestling because I'd been mentored to a point of going, it's just about the number of matches you do. Like, when your biggest influence, or the main person that's training you, the main thing that they care about is how many matches they've done in a year, and then that is passed down to you. Yeah. Then it becomes a case of like, well, am I not wrestling Friday, Saturday, Sunday? If I'm not doing that, I'm a failure. Yeah. And that's the wrong mindset to have with it, and not enjoying the matches that I was having, because it's like, well, it's just another match, and that's the way that I've been conditioned, is that it's just another match. So like, that led into it. I think I was just burnt out with like doing the production stuff, doing the hours out of it, not enjoying wrestling, having that mindset of like, I've got to wrestle as much as possible. I wasn't particularly happy with who I was as a character, because I felt like I was different people in different areas, but not due to my own choice, not due to story, due to the fact that I needed to be this person here, I need to be that person there. And actually, I didn't know who Liam Slater was as a character, as a wrestling entity. So then I was looking as like, well, why are they getting this opportunity and why are they getting that opportunity, when really I had so much opportunity, I had so much going for me, but I was in such a negative mind space that came on really quickly, that actually it just wasn't a healthy space to be. And actually stepping away from wrestling allowed me to do stuff like really focusing on PT, to really make a connection with my daughter, which now like I wouldn't change for the world. A load of things that, and with the PT stuff was then the chance to build a better mindset, and to understand about mindset, and to understand about goal setting, and to understand about like what makes you happy and what's the purpose in life. That now I get that chance to come back into wrestling with that set in place, that I actually feel like this is a better position for me to be in. So that potentially means that I missed the boat on a lot of opportunities that I had that I might not get again. That is what it is, and that's just life. I think in the long run, I'm way happier now than I would have been if I'd have just gone, you know what, I'm just going to push through. Yeah, I might have been signed somewhere, but I wouldn't have been as fulfilled as a person as I am now. And when it comes to it, wrestling is just pretend fighting in lycra pants. Like, it's not the be-all and end-all out of life. So I needed that time away to really have that time to mature and to grow.
Yeah, definitely. 'Cause you hadn't returned properly, but you did the World of Sports stuff.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So if I'm as a shooter's being completely honest with it, I don't think I was particularly needed for World of Sport. Um, I said so. Basically, I got a call, and they said like, "Are you available for these dates?" For it was a 4 day weekend
Yeah.
down in Norwich, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, yeah, I am. Um, and really, I wasn't going to miss the opportunity of appearing on mainstream TV, to be on ITV,
Yeah.
to be able to show my mum, like, look, mum, like it's me on ITV, like on a Sunday afternoon. Um, I wasn't going to miss that opportunity, so I went, yeah, like I can do it. Um, but really, I wasn't needed, and really, looking back on it, I think it was used as a bit of a tool to try and pull me back in. But I mean, I enjoyed the experience. It was cool. I've got to say, like, I've been on mainstream TV, and not a lot of people get to say that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was one of those things where I don't think I was particularly needed for it, and I felt that at the time after we'd finished doing it. I was a bit like, it'd been okay if I wasn't there.
What was the reception like when, again, at this time you're not wrestling, but they've brought you in, and then again you said you felt it was like a pull to try and get you back in, but then once taping's done, nope, I'm done. I'm gonna go do my own thing.
Yeah, so it was very much a case. Like one going back and seeing everybody was absolutely fine. Like everybody on the roster was sound, and I couldn't fault them for that at all. And it was really nice seeing people and talking to people and explaining what had happened,
Mm.
to be able to like sort of set that level. Um, but yeah, so basically done the World of Sports stuff. I've lined up a couple of bits. If you look at the timeline out of it,
Yeah.
beginning of the year, I finish up all my dates that I had. Middle of the year, I think it's April time that World of Sport filmed. We filmed that and we did that. And then I had a couple lined up for like once the filming had finished. So North, for example, and the only match that I ended up doing afterwards was against Rory. Where I'd challenged him for the belt. I'd done a return. I'd done like a return in the mask, and then the next show was that match, and then that was it, and I was out again. What had ended up happening was I'd sort of gone, okay, maybe I can drip feed myself into this, and ended up having a call with someone where they very much like pulled a guilt card. And I was just like, you know what, this isn't worth my time. This isn't worth what I want to do.
Yeah.
So then some of the stuff that I had arranged, I was just like, nah, I'm not going to do it. I didn't want to pull out on North and Bowers though, because they'd done so much for me and they'd been so good to me that I was like, I'll do this and then I'm out again. And I actually didn't think that. I thought that was it. That was me done until the next North show at the end of 2019.
What brought you back?
Shreddy break. So yeah, after the Rory match, I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. Whatever. I'll do something else. I'll find something else. But I'm not dealing with the underlying politics that were sitting in place. But then there was a match that North was setting up where Shreddy was involved with something, and they were building to like a big 8-man tag.
Yeah.
And he just messaged me out of the blue, and he's like, "Do you want to do this match? Because it makes sense, and like I think it'd be really good." And I was like, "Maybe." And then on Instagram, he started cutting this promo, and I was like, "Yeah, go on then." He twisted my arm. Let's do it. So then I did that and I started training for that. And I was just like, this buzz that I hadn't had for training in so long had suddenly come back. And I was like, okay. I needed wrestling in a sense of I needed it to give me a drive for a lot of things, for a lot of for my physical health and for my mental health. I think that I needed wrestling in some aspects. And I also think it was a detriment in other aspects. But I think that time away had allowed me to go, right, okay, if I can do the stuff that I want to do, if I can use wrestling in a way that I feel passionate about it and that I enjoy doing it. And I think that match was something I was like, okay, like I can do that. And I was like, well, maybe I can do more of this, and maybe I can make sure that I'm not spread too thinly out of it.
Did the guilt calls come back once you made a second return?
No, so no, they didn't. Which is it's fine, and like I won't touch on the person that
No.
was doing it, but they are no longer within wrestling, or at least don't seem to be. No, they didn't, and I think they realised, or they'd been told down the line, that what had sort of happened out of it, and I've never really expressed how much that call did hurt when I received it and when I got it. But yeah, in terms of coming back, it didn't on that one. I actually don't think it ever really got the chance for me to be around enough, or for me to really be stated that they were like, oh, Liam's back again, because we stopped and then everything happened and he disappeared.
So in terms of like what's next for yourself, we'll touch upon Pursuit Pro shortly, but is this you back 100%? Are you wanting to maybe go back to Tidal or NGW, or?
So like, I'd always be open for those places. I mean, before pandemic stuff happened, I did have a couple bits lined up with Tidal, that obviously didn't pan out just because of everything that happened. I speak to Rich, like, you know, just on a basis, and I'd always be happy. I think there's room to go back into NGW, whatever form that NGW might come back in. For me, it's not a full time. I'm not coming back as a wrestler full time, because for my mental state, I don't think that works right. And also, like, I enjoy PT, and I remember after doing the 8-man tag, I went back into work on Monday, and I was getting as much of a buzz out of showing someone how to do a hip hinge. Helen, who was 70, sorry, getting her to do a hip hinge. I was getting as much buzz out of that as I was from the match itself, and I went, you know what? I've got two really good things going on here. Obviously, I've got my daughter, so that takes up weekends that I'm like, I don't want to be just swanning off when I've got her, and there's going to be elements of that, obviously, but I want to make sure that I've got time to watch her grow up.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's 100%, but I'm definitely more involved in it coming back than I was, and more so now with the Pursuit Pro Wrestling stuff.
Well, before we get into Pursuit, then you mentioned the smaller men's clubs, and you wanted to touch back upon that. So, like, what do you mean? Like, how do you think they're going to stand?
This is what I'm worried about. Is that when we come back in, especially with measures and protocols that need to be in place, they do need to be in place. But I mean, again, just before we go into it, for the Pursuit Pro Wrestling stuff, I've had to do safeguarding courses and all this sort of stuff. And it's really hard to find, bizarrely. You'd think that it'd be really accessible and really easy to find, but actually, it's a bit of a process that you've got to go through with it. I mean, it needs to be a process, but it's covered almost.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for wrestling because there's not that governing body. So when I did my football coaching, that was easy because it was just attached to the whole city, and I'd be able to run badges through there. Whereas wrestling's just, is it sport? Is it theatre? Neither one of them are wanting to on up like, we'll have you.
And what I worry about there is that bigger companies that might have a bit more money into them, can sort those things out. They can bring someone in and do that sort of stuff. But your working men's club, where it's just someone that has a bit of a passion about wrestling, they want to promote a show, they probably won't have those means. So they're either not going to be able to run, or they're going to be told, well, you can't run because you don't have this set in place and you don't have that set in place. And for me, those working men's clubs, those smaller clubs, the shows that you do in front of 20 people are vital for when you're getting your feet under you, because without that, what do? Do you go from doing a training school to jumping on main shows places in front of 500, 600, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
It's a big jump for a lot of people. And also these working men's clubs, and I say working men's clubs, you'll understand the promotions that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
These smaller promotions are vital for people who maybe don't have everything in wrestling or can't dedicate all the time into wrestling, and they just enjoy being a wrestler, and they enjoy
it's that grassroots where the manager of the football team literally just goes down because his kid's part of the team and manages it, and then you may have some of the bigger companies where they're like the semi-pro, and then
yes,
see the big contracts as the professional. But
yeah, exactly that. And like if we look at Sunday League grassroots football, where it's just some mates getting together, they go down to the pub, then they play the football game. Like that happens within wrestling, and I think that if we lose that the grassroots Sunday League, then actually we'll lose a lot of people that care a lot about wrestling. And it's something that I'm worried about, is that we come back and for whatever reason or for different reasons, those shows disappear. And I think actually there's a lot of lifelines that go through those shows that people don't really realize about. And it can be really easy to be like, well, they don't have this in place and they don't have that in place. If the promoter is working a 9-to-5 job and he's just trying to get by and he's running a show, you can argue, well, he shouldn't be running a show then. But is that the same for like a Sunday League team? Like, he enjoys playing football. He has the opportunity to play football. These people enjoy running shows. And as long as they're done in a safe way, and as long as people are looked after in a sense of nobody's going through like any abuse or harassment, they should be able to run. I'm worried that they won't be there, and a lot of younger talent won't have the opportunity to get their feet under them, to work out what they're doing well, to work out what they're not doing right, to be able to go onto a show and use the Venga boys and go, you know what, yeah, this sort of works. And it doesn't matter because there's only 9 people in the crowd and they're all kids and the parents are sat at the back and they don't care. And that show was never recorded. And it's just one of those things where it is a development that then allowed me to use that going forward. If I'd have never done that, I'd never had the Venga boys, I'd have never used it at NGW, that would have never given me that push, which would have never spurred on to anything else.
No, I get what you mean. 'Cause it's difficult. Like in the wake of all this, we've seen people then trying to open promotions, and then within a month they've been, nope, you're an ons too, and then it goes. There needs to be something in place just to make sure it's safe.
Yes.
Because although it's happened to a lot of males, whether it's the sexual or even the mental abuse from the trainers, you kind of mentioned it yourself with the mindset that you got instilled on yourself wasn't healthy, and that's kind of what burnt you out. But with like the young female, it is important to make sure that it's going to be a safe environment, especially
100%.
Especially these smaller shows where there might not be as many people there and stuff like that. And hopefully there can be enough wrestlers where they might think, you know what, like you've done your safeguarding. So if you get your safeguarding, or make sure that if a wrestler can put on their CV, I'm safeguarded, I've got a DBS, or I'm a first aid trainer, or I'm a mental health first aid trainer, then hopefully they can be the way they can set it up. Like, I've not got it, but I've got this person that, for example, Liam, we're booking you tonight, you're going to be the head of the safeguard, like, and stuff like that. I think that'd be the way around it, but then again, not everybody's wrestling as a full-time job, so if somebody's working and wrestling on a weekend, when do they have time to get all the safeguarding in?
That's it. There's a lot of questions with it, and there's a lot of things that are happening within the background and that are getting set in place that I think people don't see sometimes, and it can be really easy to go, oh well, is this happening? Is this happening? Well, it might be happening. They just might not be ready to publicly come out with it, saying that, oh yes, we've got it, because actually they are in the process of getting it. I think some of it as well just comes into a culture change that is going to take more time than I think. There are people that want it right now, and actually it's going to take some processing through. So for me, Another thing that is worth touching on is that coaches in training schools should have some form of coaching certificate, whether that be through the safeguarding stuff, whether that be through a like a football coaching stuff. I've obviously got a level 2 and a level 3 personal training qualification. I now understand coaching people far better than I did back in the day. And I would always say that I'm quite an empathetic person, and I can sort of get a read on people quite well. I understand that way better now, and I understand the needs of people way better now than I ever did. And I think that was something that was missed out on, because a lot of the time, people start running a school because they're working Friday to Sunday, and then they've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, and there's only so much time that they can spend in the gym. So why don't they just start coaching people? If you're doing it that way for a personal gain, you shouldn't be coaching people.
Yeah.
As we'll go into, for me, when it comes to coaching people, I want to see people get better. I want to see people develop. I want to see people be able to do whatever they want to do in wrestling. That might just be get fitter. But if I can give them that and not look down on them because they don't want to wrestle full time, not everybody wants to wrestle full time, and that's cool. You don't have to wrestle full time. It's something that Myers has always sort of preached, and I wish that I'd listened to him earlier on about it. But I completely agree with him now. Like, wrestling doesn't have to be a full time endeavor.
Yeah, Myers has always said that, and again, I think he was this north. It's as if we're in our own bubble and nobody really looks into it. Myers is somebody that could go on any card and put on any sort of match, and he's always one where I'm like, you deserve more. And he's like, I'm happy with my job. Like, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and then go wrestle. And he sees that as going to play football down at the park with the mates or something like that. And I remember speaking to Sarah Marie Taylor, based in Scotland, and she's recently come back, and I went, well, look, you did everything in the Scottish wrestling scene to begin with. Is this something you wanted to do? Is NXT? And she was like, no. And she was like, but I shouldn't feel bad about it.
Oh, exactly.
It's like, well, why wouldn't you want to sign there? And she was like, well, many reasons. I've got my child, or you know what, these huge audiences or the huge spotlight gives me anxiety. So then I'm not going to enjoy it. So why would I do it just to say I'm doing it if I'll be happier in life and enjoy what I'm doing my shoot job, wrestling on a side, and still getting the time with my child? And that is completely fine. Like, you don't tell somebody that just goes down to play football, semi-pro or even amateur level, Sunday league, Saturday league. I'm like, well, if you don't want to be a pro, why are you playing?
Exactly. It don't make sense. Not, like, again, if you look at it from like a health and fitness point of view, not everybody wants to be a bodybuilder. Not everybody wants to step on stage and be a bodybuilder. Some people go to the gym because they want to improve the fitness and they want to feel better. And if they get to a point where they're like, you know what, I've got a bit of muscle mass on me and I'm feeling good, sweet. Does that mean that then they have to go and step on stage and compete? No, it doesn't. Same way CrossFit. Not everybody has to go to the CrossFit Games. One, there's not enough space up there, and that's just everything's a pyramid, and there's people up at the top, and then it's just a case of that filters down. And there's no problem if it's a case of you enjoy doing CrossFit. You might do a competition, but you don't get through the open. That's cool. Yeah. You enjoy it for you, and if you want to go on and do more, you've got to think about the sacrifices that you need to make to do that, and if it's even worth doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I always remember, like, with my football stuff, I don't coach now, despite having I got my FA level 1, 2, UEFA B, and I was like, it's not for me now. The amount of time I was putting in and stuff like that, and the politics and just things in my personal life, I was like, I'm falling out of love with football. A bit similar to yourself with wrestling, where football was my one big thing, and you quit wrestling, I ran off to Africa. Like, I went over there, and it was just, again, and people, when I came back, they was like, right, you coming back? And I was like, no. And I was happy doing a social engagement thing on a Friday and a Saturday night, on behalf of Hull City. And it was 2 hours, get kids off the street, playing football, facilitating it in a safe environment. And I was like, well, why don't you just come back and do coaching? Do you want to work the summer camps? I was like, no. I'm not interested now. And
Yeah.
that's when I started looking at the routes away. I was like, and it wasn't as if I hated it all. I loved working with people. But then, so that's why I got into the mental health side of things, and then started getting into helping people move from their job, like their life, and getting them into work and courses and stuff like that. And I think it's something that people need to learn. Like if you don't want to be full time, or if you don't want to sign for a company, or like, there's no shame in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And it's hard when it's very much seen as, oh, that's the dream. And for a lot of people, they get into it because they see that top level stuff and they think, well, that's where I want to go. But then we have to work out where our own lives fit into that, and what is the level. And I used to look at that when people would do basically what I did, where they go, I'm done, I'm out, where they had a lot of potential, and then it's like, oh well, this is self-sabotage. Well, sometimes self-sabotage is needed because it's not going to fulfill you in a long-term way. And actually, like, it's not a bad thing if you then go, I'm not about this at all, I need to get out.
Your mental state's more important than professional success, in my opinion. And from like what you said, if you didn't stay, yeah, you may be signed, but would you have been happy with who you were, or some choices or whatever? Probably not. But now, like, you could be wrestling WWE each week, but if you weren't happy and weren't happy with your personal life, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I'm thankful of now, is that I am very happy that's then allowed me to go, you know what, I am going to put more back into wrestling and give back to wrestling in some aspects. But then equally, Ella, my partner, I love spending time with her. I love going out, like when we had the opportunity to go to cities and stuff like that, to have a weekend away that I never really took the time to do before. And I was selfish with that, and I'll admit that I was selfish with that. And I was like, I said to people, I can't go on holiday because I've got shows coming up. And that was such a selfish point of view from it. And now with Ella, it's the case that I enjoy going places with Ella, and Ella wrestles as well. So then hopefully we can go places together. But in saying that, I'd probably rather just go to a city. We went to Amsterdam a couple of years back, and it was class. And I was like, this place is amazing. I want to do that again. That's, if anything, as much as COVID coming to an end means, oh, wrestling can start coming back, also means that me and Ella can go to places, and we can go to city breaks, and I'm looking forward to that just as much as I am wrestling.
Yeah, definitely. Try and tie the wrestling in. Like, I've been doing a series looking in the Scandinavian and like Nordic scenes, and Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway. That's all growing, and I just try and tie it up. Right, we want to go there so we can have the weekend. Like, the missus, she's not into wrestling whatsoever, but from these interviews, it seems like I could be able to go across there and do stuff. I was like, just come along. I went, even if you don't want to come to the show, you and Malia can do something for a couple of hours, and then we'll have the rest of the weekend doing something. And it's good to see that you've got that mindset. But you mentioned you don't want to do it full time, but what if AEW or WWE did come knocking? I was like, here's a full time contract.
It is a hard question, because there is part of me that would want to go, you know what, I want to be able to I want to do it, and I want to prove that I can do it. But then there's also a part of me that feels like I wouldn't want that as well, and for a variety of reasons. One, I'm quite settled where I am, and I'm quite happy with where I am in life. But if that contract meant that it then opened stuff up along the way, that it was more money coming in and all that sort of stuff, then it'd be a hard one to look at. It's not something that I'm thinking about at this moment in time, because honestly, I'm not at that place. And if we're looking in like a rank order, there are many, many people above me. But also, in saying that, I like to think that if I can facilitate people to get those contracts, I would be as fulfilled as getting the contract. If anything, maybe a bit more fulfilled, because I can then go, cool, the stuff that I know has helped someone get up to a different level. To be offered a contract myself, I'm not saying no, going, oh yeah, of course I would. Yeah, I definitely want one. Like, Cody, get on the phone and sign me up. But, there did be a lot of hesitation that went into it.
Yeah, definitely. I can see why. So before you mentioned facilitating and trying to get people to contracts. So before we finish with Pursuit Pro, after dark, the stuff you're doing. Tell people about your YouTube channel and the sort of stuff you've been doing on there.
So my YouTube channel really has been a fitness one in terms of me trying to use the platform to talk to wrestlers about wrestling and fitness and how we can get the most out of both. With the gyms closed, I sort of hit a bit of a rut with it, just because I've not been able to talk about anything. Because why can we talk about anything? Because it's literally we're just sat in lockdown. But we watch Dark on a regular basis. Me and Ella both really enjoy AEW. We play a game where if we're on a car drive, we'll stick AEW themes on, and Ella absolutely batters me at it. She's far more engaged into that than I am. But we watch AEW Dark and we'll sit there and we'll talk about it and we'll sort of bounce ideas back and forth off each other. And I'll go, well, this could have done with this and this could have done with this. And I just thought one day, I'm like, I have a YouTube channel that I'm not really using at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I enjoy talking about this stuff. And it sits on it. And one of the things that I spoke to her about as well was it almost sits too much on a line of like kayfabe breaking and that. But then I was like, and she rightly said like, yeah, but everybody does it. And like, if you enjoy talking about it, and she watched it and she was like, yeah, this is fine. Like I enjoyed that. I got stuff out of it. So for me, After Dark is basically my take on what is happening on the AEW Dark. And one of the reasons for that was the first form of this idea was looking at a wrestling match as like a sports analysis in terms of breaking down the times of things that were happening. But then it came to like, I watched Bret Hart and Bulldog from SummerSlam 92, and it was like, I can't break down how these guys are doing this and why they aren't gassed. They're not gassed because they've been wrestling 20 years. Like, they know wrestling inside and out. So, but then watching Dark, I was like, oh, well, he could have done this better and they could have done that better. And she's done this really well. And I was like, this is a better execution of what I wanted to do and how to just prompt people and coach people and sort of talk a little bit about it to then go, I have knowledge, like, come and learn from me. I love AEW Dark. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's such a good platform. And really, it's a chance for me to look at it and go, they're going to be big. So then in 5 years' time, when they are big, I go, do you see when I said that they were going to be big and they are big? Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah. So that's my purpose for doing it. And again, it's not for wrestling fans. It's for wrestlers and to open up a conversation about, and in a sense, wrestling fans to get an in-depth look at wrestling. Because I don't think it's a bad thing that we break kayfabe. Like, we all know that movies are fake and that the actors are good actors because they execute things in certain ways. So why do we do the same about wrestling? Doesn't mean that I can't still be involved with it. I think The Acclaimed are the best thing that are on TV at the moment. I understand.
So good.
Fantastic. I understand why that happens. I can still invest in them. I love Dark Order. I think they're great and I love the personalities that they have. It doesn't mean that I can't be invested in a storyline just because I know how the inner workings of it are. But yeah, like, I'm looking at it from a wrestler's point of view to almost spark conversation with wrestlers and to get wrestlers thinking about, what do I need from wrestling? How do I need to work wrestling in order to get the most out of it in whatever capacity I do it in?
Have you thought about trying to get people to give you videos of their matches and for you to do that?
No, I haven't in that aspect. And I think one of the reasons why I haven't done that is because, one, I've looked at people's matches, like Rogan from recent Rogan sent me a video over recently, or a month or two back, looking at a tag match, and I broke that down in a similar way that I do with the AEW Dark stuff. What I don't want to do there is put people online and be like, this is what they can do better, this is what they can do worse, especially if they are developing and growing. But when they're on a YouTube platform anyway that is out there, it's almost open for review in a sense. I'm always happy to look at people's matches. I'm always happy to talk to people about wrestling and to discuss ideas back and forth, because I love talking about wrestling. This is why we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, because I love talking about wrestling. But I wouldn't do that as a YouTube show.
Oh no, not as a YouTube show, just as like, hey, send me one of your matches.
Oh, absolutely. And like, yeah, I've done some bits, and yeah, like I said, like I've been on mainstream TV, but like I'm just a guy. Like I'm just a guy from Bradford that likes wrestling. But I do feel like I have a decent knowledge of wrestling, and I can articulate stuff well. And I like to say a lot of the lads from Newcastle that are involved in North, like I had some hand in helping them build up more, or at least gone, this really works, maybe that doesn't work. And that's not to take any credit away from Rampage. He's very much done all the work. I just think that I'm quite good on going, what about this and what about that? But yeah, like if anybody wants to send me a match, or if anybody just wants to talk about wrestling and bounce ideas around, I love doing it, and I'd always be happy to talk to people.
Brilliant. So where can people find the After Dark stuff then?
So it is on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is Lazarus Personal Training. So if they search After Dark, or they search Lazarus Personal Training, they'll probably come across it on YouTube. I tend to plug it on my socials as well. So I'm Lazarus_PT on Instagram. Liam _SLTR on Twitter, or if you search Liam Slater, I'll probably come up. And then for people that I'm on Facebook with, I tend to post it on there as well. So I tend to stick it out on the rounds and I'm trying to do it on the Wednesday after Dark comes out. After Dark.
Pursuit Pro Wrestling.
Yes.
So with Nathan Black, obviously you've been announced as one of the trainers where you do the personal training side, and from the post that I was reading of your idea, it is like a very intimate performance center kind of thing, where you're not in as if you're just going to turn up. It's just a ring. You're going to have all the other equipment that people are needing to use. Tell people about Pursuit Pro Wrestling. Like, is it just going to be a training academy? Will it become a company to put on shows and content?
So for myself and Nathan, when we talked about it, and Nathan had some really, I've only known Nathan a couple of months, and I met him when we had that little break where we could do a bit of training. He had someone else lined up, and they were like, I can't really commit to that, but ask Liam, because Liam might be up for it. So he sent me a message, and I was like, 100%, let's do it, because again, like I said, like I always enjoy coaching people. I love talking about wrestling. For me, this is where I think I belong in a place. So we started bouncing ideas back and forward, and what he wants out of wrestling and what he's looking to do with it. So we're very much looking to be an all-round, how do we build a wrestler? And Nathan has a great way of looking at it, and I completely agree with him. When you're looking at a wrestler, you're looking at three things, like, can they wrestle? Can they talk? Do they look like a wrestler? So yes, we've got the wrestling side out of it, which is where I'm lending a massive hand. We've got a gym set up, and honestly, like the gym setup, the stuff that he's got for it is just class. And what I'm hoping is with that equipment, with my expertise in terms of personal training, that we'll be able to elevate people up that way. And he's not a small guy himself, he's a big guy, so he has knowledge from that front. And then talking like a wrestler, while I understand character and stuff, Nathan has and I don't think people really realise how much of a performance background Nathan has. But he really gets that sort of stuff. And then he also knows people that really get character stuff. So I think we can really help build that. And when we've talked about wrestling, and when I've looked at wrestling before, yeah, you can have a ring, but what is wrestling? Wrestling is a character, and wrestling is being able to tell a story. And how do we tell a story? So that's really what we want to be able to do with the Pursuit Pro Wrestling.
Oh, brilliant! So will there be shows? Will there be?
As it stands, we are looking at being a training centre, as heart and soul is being a training facility. Will that potentially go on to running shows? Yeah, maybe, but more in terms of giving our trainees a chance to wrestle on shows. Something that I want to do is be able to, whenever it comes to having the chance to do it,
2050.
yeah, when it comes to 2050 and we're allowed to run shows, I want to run like once a month in-house training shows where it's like in front of just the people that are wrestling to get people to get the reps back in again, because we've all had like a year and a bit of not wrestling. Let's get these like training shows in so we can do that. Not in front of a crowd, just in front of the audience. Maybe we film it, maybe we watch it back. Nathan's got plans to have like TVs and stuff up and that. So we can watch the stuff back, we can critique it. We own the unit, so we can stay in there for as long as we want, so we can run the show and then watch the entirety of the show back over again. Does that come to a point where we run a show at a building somewhere? Probably. It's probably going to be the case. It's not our intent. Yeah. We're not looking to be like, we're going to do this so we have a group of people that we can then use to set up a ring somewhere. We're very much like, and I've got good ties with a lot of people in the north, like a lot of companies in the north, that I can go, do you have space for these people? I've got a car that can come from here. Do you need those? And if it means that I don't have a booking because someone else has a booking, cool, no worries. Yeah. I'll just sit at home. I'm not going to pull like a Matt Hardy and be like, oh, I need like 30% of your fee. For me, it's that for me, it's that they go off and do that sort of stuff. So we've already had like contacts and links where it's like, okay, this works out quite nicely. And I've spoken to other training schools as well about like, could we potentially come to you guys and, you know, and mix that way, which then what I'm hoping for that spreads a bigger community with a better mindset about wrestling. Something that I'm very adamant on is making sure that people that we're training with understand everything that's happened with speaking out, and that we correct it and we do it better, and we make sure that we move forward in a better light. And what do people need for the mental health when it comes to wrestling? Do they understand what they want as a success out of it? You know, making sure that everybody feels safe and secure. I've spoken to Sam Bailey from Future Shock about what they're doing in terms of their safeguarding and utilising some of the stuff that way as well. So I think overall it's very much a case of going, we're a training school at heart. We may end up doing shows, but that is purely going to be to facilitate our trainees working on shows in front of people. I say this, I don't know, who knows what the future might hold. I don't see myself as a promoter. We may end up playing this clip back in like 2 years' time when I'm running a show and being like, oh, do you remember when you said this? I see myself as a trainer and as a coach.
Oh, brilliant. Now, see, I was going to ask about, well, if you're not doing shows, how are you going to get your guys to be seen? Because, again, the beginning of this interview, we spoke about people don't look at local guys or academy guys. They just look at, right, what big name can I get in, because it might pull 5 internet fans in or something like that. And it's good to see that you're going to use those connections. For example, like with NGW, with their Butlins run, if you can get one of your guys, just one of you guys on even a week's run at Butlins, that's more work than what they'd probably do in 4 months, 5 months at an internet company.
Yeah, definitely. It's little bits like that where it's like, can we get someone on a run there? Can we get a car going up to this place? And then, again, one of Nathan's visions is to be able to, like, he's a lot about quality, and he's a lot about, like, making sure that the quality is up to a high standard, which I completely agree with. So ideally, we're going to have this place set up where it's like, if we wanted to film in there, we can film in there, and it's going to look professional quality. Like he's setting up a promo room, so like people can have the promo pictures taken, and then they can cut promos. So rather than it being like this, as like someone's promo that they're filming for a company or to put over the character, they can film it in a way that looks professional. And then something that I want to do is like with these training matches that now that we're in a stage where actually matches in front of no audience is the norm and people don't feel weird about it, that it's like, if someone has a banging match where they're like, that was really good, let's take it. Let me give you it. You can put it on YouTube and you can give the whole match out. You can use that for a music video that then you can put together and put on Twitter as like a highlight reel and help people build out that way, which, being completely honest, is not something that I've particularly executed well on, but I know it works. And again, like, I don't have to lose a ton of weight to know how to tell people to lose weight. I don't have to put on a ton of muscle to tell people how to put on muscle. It's knowing the knowledge out of it. So I think utilising those things and looking at wrestling in a far bigger context rather than being like, get onto a show, how do we do this and how do we play that in a modern context?
100%. Like, you see people, whether it's wrestling or even football, like with managers, a lot of them haven't had the best playing career. But it's similar to myself. Like, the highest I've played, I think it was like 13th tier level of English football. But I knew how to tell people to do it better than what I could do it, because you have the natural abilities and you can only do so much in yourself. But given the training when they're first getting out and showing them the correct techniques and stuff like that, I 100% agree with it. And it seems like with the quality that you're wanting, obviously not quantity of just, here's a cash cow, let's just get 20 people in that we know aren't going to get anywhere else. How are you going to facilitate having the quality but also giving people opportunity? Because again, a lot of the time you might get somebody who might be a little bit bigger or something like that, or may not be from an athletic background, but their knowledge from watching and their passion they may be the next big star. It's just about nurturing, because from my experiences of even wrestling training, with people's approach, there was some people, especially at the time when I was coaching, I was like, don't like how you said that. And it's not the snowflake generation or whatever people want to call it. It's about knowing different people's strengths, different people's weaknesses, and how to unlock people's ability correctly. Like, you can't have 20 people and coach them the same way, because that's not going to unlock the potential. So how are you going to combat that?
Yeah, like, I completely agree. Like, again, from a personal training standpoint, while a lot of the principles stay the same, there's little nuances that I have to make and change where everybody's program doesn't particularly look the same. There's slight differences to it, and we might all be aiming towards the same goal, but there are changes that need to be made along the way. So I think, again, one of the good things is that we have his own space, we have his own unit where we're not confined for time. So we can make training as long as we need to make it. Like, we've got the space there, so if people need to come in a little bit earlier to work on some stuff, I'll be there so we can do those sort of things. Ideally, once we get up and running, a lot of these things at the moment are like ideas that we set in place. But like, ideally, I'd like to be able to do it where we are online on like a Facebook group where it's like, okay, like, I want you to work on this, I want you to work on that. Like, can you be doing this stuff? Can you be doing that stuff? To nurture them outside of wrestling. Because I think a lot of times for people, it's 3 hours out of the week and then they don't really get anything else out of it. How can I help them better themselves physically out of the ring? Well, that comes into gym stuff, and that's what I know. And again, it's looking at it and understanding what different people need from different elements. I always think that I've had a pretty good way of approaching people in different ways and knowing what different people need at different times. And there's certain things that I want to do with like beginners classes, for example, of like, how do we make them better? How do we make sure that someone doesn't come into a class and it's like, oh, you've never wrestled before? Well, that's cool. You're going to be doing some heat on someone. They don't know how to do that. Like, they need to know how to bump and how to roll and set those foundations in place. And I think having a split of classes is going to help us do that. Something that I ideally would like to do is have different levels of training, in a sense of, one night is a bit more of a free-flowing class where people who are show-ready or on shows get the chance to come in and go, I need to work on this and this. Cool, no worries, let's work on that. Yeah. Having another night where it's a bit more structured and in place, and it's more about drilling and getting stuff right, and less about character and more about the fundamentals of wrestling. There's a load of ideas that I've got for it, and a load of things that I'm looking forward to doing with it. But again, like you said, it's about making sure that people understand where they want to go with it, that they're realistic with it, and that the training, while it is a group environment, also has little bits catered towards each person.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like, I'm excited to see where it goes. Like, I don't think there's anything similar in the UK, especially. Like, it is as if you're trying to do like your own performance center, essentially, and it'll be interesting to see, especially like you said, people have been used to watching wrestling with no fans. So even if, again, not for profit of putting shows on in front of audiences, well, there's nothing to stop you from doing an academy series where you get them to do the storylines and stuff like that, and you're putting on this series. I'll put them over because Reach Wrestling down in Plymouth.
Yeah.
One of the best training schools in the UK, in my opinion. The way Grayson and Jason, they've both DBS checks. They do the in just right. We're going to train you how to be in the ring. They'll get them doing all the conditioning and stuff like that. And the way they've structured it, they managed to do a Reach Unit 10 series where it's based on all of the Academy's guys and themselves. And then you've had like Eddie Ryan appear because he's like, actually, that looks good. I'll get involved.
Yeah.
And he probably did it for free because it wasn't a monetary thing. There was no fans, and it was just to tell these stories with these academy guys. And it's, whilst the world stood still, there's a handful of people where I've passed their names on to different promoters, and they're having a look and they've enjoyed certain people's work. Where once the pandemic's over and wrestling's up, because of that series, their academy students will get picked up elsewhere as well now.
Yeah, definitely.
That's something you definitely could do where you wanted to keep true to your students and not start being another company. Do like these sort of series.
Definitely. It's primarily when we get started, it's about people getting the reps back under the belt and stuff like that. But it's very much what I see as like, okay, how can we use this unit? How can we film stuff in here? Like, I can edit stuff, maybe not the cleanest editor in the world, but I can edit together a show, no doubt. So I can put that out online and, you know, and try and build some traction from that way. And if it just helps these people get into a rhythm of being able to tell stories again, and similar to Reach, and I've got Jason on Facebook, so I see the stuff that he's coming out with, and it's good to see. And I'm glad that people have the same idea, because it's almost reaffirming that, yeah, this makes sense to do it in that way. I definitely think that, again, while we're at a point where wrestling is in a little bit of a changing state, and British wrestling's in a changing state, I think this is a way that people can still wrestle and put things out there and enjoy wrestling without the show element to it.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. So if people are interested in Pursuit Pro, where can they find it on social media?
So we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, which is Pursuit Pro Wrestling, or at Pursuit Pro Wrestling on both of those. I hope I haven't butchered it, but I am pretty sure it is Pursuit Pro Wrestling on both of those. So if you search it, you'll find us on both Facebook and on Instagram as well.
It'll be in the description below as well, so you'll be able to find it there. Liam, thank you for coming on, man. Like, it's been great talking to you about, again, your career. Me being from Hull, like, before I started helping out with NGW, I always saw you, and I think your body of work was fantastic. So it's good to see you back doing stuff. And Pursuit Pro, like, I'm excited to see where it goes for you. So all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for talking to me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Brilliant. And once again, tell people where they can find you on social media.
YouTube, I'm at Lazarus Personal Training, or if you search Lazarus Personal Training, you'll find me. On Instagram, I am Lazarus_PT, and on Twitter, I am Liam_SLTR, or if you search Liam Slater, I'll come up that way. Again, if you want to follow up Pursuit Pro Wrestling, search Pursuit Pro Wrestling, and we'll come up, no doubt.
Brilliant. Again, Liam, thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you do follow Liam and Pursuit Pro Wrestling. Hit like, hit subscribe. Until next time, bye for now.